I stole my abusive boss's identity and got him arrested. He never knew it was me. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever taken? Mine happened 6 years ago, and sometimes I still smile thinking about it. I was 22, fresh out of college, with a mountain of student debt, and desperate for work. After months of searching, I finally landed an entry-level position at a prestigious marketing firm. The salary was barely enough to cover rent and loan payments, but I was grateful just to have a job. My boss, let's call him Richard, was the kind of man who built his career on breaking others. He would scream at employees until they cried, throw objects across the room when frustrated, and regularly made comments about women's bodies, including mine. Hair did nothing because he brought in the biggest clients. 3 months in, I discovered I was making $15,000 less than my male colleagues with identical qualifications. When I politely asked Richard about the discrepancy, he laughed and said, "Pretty girls like you should be grateful for any job. Maybe wear lower cut tops if you want a raise." I needed the job desperately, so I swallowed my pride and kept working. Then came the incident that changed everything. My mother was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. I asked for one afternoon off to drive her to her first chemotherapy appointment, just 4 hours. Richard denied my request, saying personal problems aren't the company's concern. When I explained it was for my mother's cancer treatment, he said, "Ex-mention's got a sob story. Either be here or clean out your desk." I went to the appointment anyway. When I returned the next day, I was fired, no severance, no references, nothing. As I packed my desk, Richard stood over me and said, "This is why I hate hiring women, or is putting family drama over real work." What Richard didn't know was that I worked in the digital security department. My job included handling executive passwords and access credentials. And in his arrogance, Richard had never bothered to change his passwords after firing me. I didn't act immediately. I waited 3 months, applied for jobs with a fake reference from Richard, and secured a new position at a competitor firm. Then one night, I logged into Richard's company email using his unchanged password. I didn't steal money or send inappropriate emails pretending to be him. That would be too obvious. Instead, I set up an elaborate auto-forward system that sent copies of specific client communications to my anonymous email account. Over the next 2 months, I carefully documented every instance where Richard was defrauding clients, charging for services never performed, double billing, inflating expenses. There were dozens of examples, totaling over $350,000 in fraud. Then I created an anonymous email account and sent detailed evidence to 3 places: the company's board of directors, their biggest client, and the state attorney general's office. The investigation was swift. Richard was fired, then arrested 2 weeks later. The story made local business news. Parrot executive charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. He lost his house, his reputation, and eventually his freedom when he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. The company reached out to former employees as part of their internal investigation. I played innocent, expressing shock at the revelations. They even offered me my job back at a higher salary, which I politely declined. Richard never knew it was me. To him, I was just another disposable young woman he had crushed on his way up. He probably doesn't even remember denying my request to take my mother to chemotherapy. And so does my mother, who beat her cancer and was sitting beside me when we watched the local news coverage of Richard being led out of court in handcuffs. Some might call what I did unethical. I call it justice. Richard built his career destroying others through fraud and abuse. I simply created the paper trail that exposed what he was already doing, the most satisfying part. I didn't have to fabricate a single document. His own actions were enough to destroy him. I just made sure the right people saw them.